we're living in an abundant society. So if we see, like, I'll use the example of you and I don't know, say that you had Joe Smith on your podcast. Doesn't mean Joe Smith is not going to come on my podcast because he came on your podcast.
Mm-hmm.
If we're looking at it through the lens of lack, then we're not going to get Joe Smith on the podcast because the universe is abundant. So just because Candice has some stuff doesn't mean Sarah can't get there too. So I think we have to really remember that we're not going into that kind of Darwinist mentality, like every man for themselves. It's not like that. Like we live in an abundant universe that will give to you what you reflect. So if you
Mm-hmm.
just keep that in mind the whole time, then you'll be okay. But if you get in that negative hole, be conscious about it, like what you and I have done in the past, and get yourself out of it. Because if you stay in it, you're just going to be reflected more of what you don't want. And I think that's really necessary for people to hear.
Right, and it's also so important to know what you don't want. So
Yeah.
those examples for you are also saying, "Pay attention, don't do this," and, like, make different choices. And they also say if you feel like everyone has already done it all and that you can't start a podcast because it's oversaturated, go into the cereal aisle or go into the
Yes.
bread aisle, and there's an abundance of white bread, and they're all labeled and packaged differently, and everyone has a different favorite, and they might buy a different one. Like, there is just abundance, and people like multiple options and choices, and don't let like a saturation, a quote saturation of any market deter you if that's where your heart wants you to go.
Yeah. And I think that's such beautiful advice. And really, I think it was J.K. Rowling who got rejected by so many publishers before her book was a success. And then it was like, the biggest book in the world or something like that. Just because one person says you can't do it doesn't mean that you can't do it. And granted, if you do try 10 times and you get nowhere fast, then maybe it is a sign. But if you feel that there's still something inside that says that you want to do this, then give it your all. Just don't take one person's advice and let that be gospel for you. Try and work out your own path and find the information that you need, because I think that's very important as well.
Do you have a way to discern when to pivot? Because I think with her, I want to say it was like 86 times that she got turned down before, or maybe it was even closer to 100 before someone
Wow.
accepted her book deal. And obviously, it made her a billionaire because it was just wildly successful. So imagine all of those people that said no. So that's a lot of times and a lot of feedback of people saying this is garbage. So how do you know that you're in alignment or you are doing the right thing versus I need to pivot, maybe this isn't my skill set, or maybe I'm off by just like a little bit, I'm missing the mark by a little bit?
That's such a good question. I actually had this the other day where I'm trying to do a few different things for the podcast. And a producer came up with this brilliant idea and we recorded some stuff. And she was like, "This is amazing." And I listened to it and I thought, there's something not right here. Like, something didn't sit comfortably with me, but I didn't quite know what it was. And then a few other people listened to it and they're like, "Yeah, that's really good." And I'm like, okay. Like, people that I do trust are saying that this is good. And these are people in the business. They're not just like random friends. And then my audio producer, who, we were talking about our love for audio producers before we got on today, who is very experienced. I said, "Can you cut this up?" He did. And I said, "What do you think of it?" He goes, "Yeah, I think you can do better." And I'm like, I knew it. I agree with you. But it wasn't till he said that I knew there was something in my gut that didn't feel right about it. So, kind of going on to what you're talking about, like in the opposite way, my heart told me there was something that still needed to be worked on with this concept. And a few people were saying to me that it was really good, but I knew in my heart of hearts that it wasn't quite there yet. And then someone said to me, my audio producer, "You can do more work on this. It's not there yet." But it was a good lesson for me to teach, to go back to my gut feeling. And I think if you are like JK Rowling, I'm assuming, I don't know the ins and outs of her story, but she must have had a feeling that this was going to be a book that would work, because going to 78 or 100, however many people you said, publishers, and having that many rejections, like, you'd be like, oh god, like, there is a people in professional places telling me this book isn't good. But she had a knowing. So I think it like goes back to that. I had a knowing that this concept was not quite right yet.
Mhm.
So I think in our gut, in our intuition, we have this knowing, and I think we need to follow that. If you're putting out work, say it's for a book or a podcast or anything in your life that you want to achieve, and you kind of think like, maybe it's not that good yet, or I know this is going to be good, but just not the right person has found it, then I would say follow that more than anyone else's guidance.